Hello there. Black Star, still rising. This is your host, Silver, also known as Black Butterfly. And we have such an outstanding program today. We have a friend of mine, a brother of mine as part of the Divine Nine, Kappa brother, but I still love him. Brother John Adams. Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't know we were doing that now. You didn't tell me you were going to do that in the program. Brother John Adams, member of the Divine Nine, but more importantly, for his things that he's doing with the program that just went ahead of us, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I want to do these shout-outs. I got to do those because time gets precious at the end of the program. And I want to shout out to our studio producers, the ones that got us mic'd up and everything and looking nice, comb my hair and lipstick, not lipstick, but makeup on. Both Rosio Santos and Imani Payne. Thank you, or again, I'm going to thank you at the end too, but I want to make sure I got these things in. Special shout out always for our sponsor. And our sponsor is Black Star Project. And it's named in the memory of Philip Jackson, the founder of the Black Star Project, who many of us had admired over the years, but his work, his voice is still continuing under the leadership now of his sister, Gloria Smith. So welcome today to this broadcast, and thank you all for being here again. I have a couple of quick announcements, is that I want you to be aware that at the corner of 35th and Philip Jackson Parkway, that's at 35th and King Drive, but now known as Philip Jackson Parkway, there will be a pre-Kwanzaa celebration for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, at the 35th at the Philip Jackson Parkway. And we'll hope to see you out there from about 4 o'clock, I think, until 8 in the evening. So if you call at Black Star, you'll get some more details on it. But again, let me do a little bit of quick introduction of John. Known him for a number of years. One of the people that I have admired in the field of, he's been was a comptroller with Push.
Yeah, the
for
CFO,
how many years?
Chief Financial Officer.
Chief Financial Officer.
For 16 years.
And only recently went with another company as you.
Infrastructure Engineering, and that's where I'm the controller. Infrastructure Engineering is a 25 plus million civil engineering firm, growing. We have offices in New York, Indianapolis, Detroit. We're going to be opening one soon in Houston, just to name a few.
Interesting background about you. Might have to talk about that another time because I know they're going to be contributing to places like Can TV and to Black Star. We're looking forward to that.
And New York.
And New York too. Okay. We are going to talk about the Bronzeville Trail Task Force.
Yes.
And we might as well jump into that, John. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, because we have some other things that I think are going to make Congressman Jonathan Jackson proud, and talking about the Golden Awards, but that's another thing. Go ahead.
Yes. So in January of 2020, and Steve, I could only tell you divine intervention, I began to imagine that the abandoned, what was known as the Kenwood L embankment, runs east and west down 40th Street, right down the heart of Bronzeville, and had been abandoned since 1957. I began to imagine that it could be repurposed to a linear park, to a walking, running, and biking trail. Of course, that's January 2020. By March of 2020, the city shut down, state shut down. We were in the midst of coronavirus and the pandemic. And I found myself certainly working from home like everyone else. And with some extra time on my hands, I began to organize a kitchen cabinet, if I may, different people around town to advise me on how to pursue this particular initiative. Steve, by September of 2020, we incorporated the Bronzeville Trail Task Force, Inc., and immediately applied for our 501c3 as a federally tax-exempt organization.
I'm going to hold you for a second. Sure. I got to make a little interjection.
Yeah, and I want to turn my phones off.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do that. I want to make this a point. Get your pencil and papers out, because we're going to give you some information that you need to take with you. The folks at Atlas senior facility on 79th at Craigier. Folks, you get your pencil and paper out. Some of those great folks that have been supportive, Alicia Henry, the executive director or regional director for the seniors program at Atlas and other facilities in the city. And we're glad to always have them. I wave to you. I see you out there. Lenore Hill, the other gang that you have with you, we're glad to see you watching today. And you may have some questions, and we'll get you a chance to answer those. But one last thing, John.
Sure.
And you and I talked about this. What you're doing is a chance for seniors. And this whole episode for the fall, winter has been devoted towards empowering seniors and issues that impact seniors.
Yes.
And one of the things is volunteerism for organizations like you to do what they're capable of doing and what experience they have they can bring and contribute to them.
Absolutely.
So I want you seniors out there, and I have to remind you, you may be older, but you're not elderly. You are our elders.
Yes.
And not elderly. You got a lot of talent, vision. We want you to pick and choose the things that you can do. John, go back and take over again.
Yeah, and Steve, I want to echo what you just said, that our organization would certainly welcome volunteers from any walk of life, and especially seniors who have experience in a whole variety of areas. We could use people who were former educators. We could use people who were engaged in government or civil activists. And so just to mention a few, certainly people who are organizers, people who are involved in arts and entertainment. We are a complete voluntary organization at this moment. And so it's volunteerism that has got us where we are, Steve, and we will welcome any support that we could get from seniors, juniors, freshmen, whomever.
You do know that when I'm on the air here, I'm Silver.
Oh, you're Silver.
I'm not Steve.
My bad. I said,
we'll let you go.
Okay.
I'm Brandon, right?
That's right.
You gotta help me.
Gotta help you, Silver. Gotta help you.
Go ahead.
One could reach us through our website. Certainly take a look at our website, www.bronzevilletrail.org.
Get your pencil out right, folks.
Again, that's www.bronzevilletrail.org. And you could send us an email at bronzeville@gmail.com. We don't have a secretary or receptionist, so we would prefer an email to reach out to us. And I promise you that we will get back to you. And again, that's bronzevilletrail@gmail.com. Steve, I'd like to go back to the physical trail development and tell your listening Silver real quick. You see, I have some silver, so my apologies.
You're an elder
Silver.
too.
That's right. That's right. That the history behind that rail embankment is just fascinating and incredible. So, and it's a senior crowd, if I may, Silver, who really will appreciate that history. So this rail line began in the early 1880s. It was grade level, and it went from the Chicago Union Stockyards to the lakefront. And certainly it crossed a number of railroads, and it brought livestock into the stockyards, and produce certainly came out and was distributed around the country and the world eventually. And Chicago is known as the meat processing capital of the world.
Hog butcher of the world.
Right. And Steve, I'm just so blessed to be old enough to know people who were in meat processing, either in the stockyards or some of the other companies, the Swift, the Armors, that process meats.
Tell a little bit about the history of, when you talk about the meat process and the folks who did the work, who were they? There are very few people know, and how did they get their training?
Oh my God. Steve, it just brought tears to my eyes to learn that as rural African-American men and their families arrived in Chicago, really began to predate what we consider the Great Migration period.
Can I get my little play?
Of course.
My grandfather, born in 1878.
There you go.
Came to Chicago with my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, in the Great Migration in 1960. He took that rail line from around Bowen and Cottage Grove.
That's correct.
Took that to the stockyards. I didn't know that until later on. I went to the stockyards on a field trip when I was at Corpus Christi. That's right, you and I are both alumni of Corpus Christi. But my grandfather back then helped build all the meat packing places in there when they came from Alabama, a place called Polee, Alabama. But go ahead, John.
That's great, Steve. That's the story.
Yeah.
And so as African American men arrived in Chicago, they got on the stockyard line. And again, it was grade level during the early part of the 1900s, and went into the stockyards. And Silver, they were hired on the spot because they had come from farms, they had come from plantations, they already knew how to slaughter livestock, and so they had on-the-job training, if I may, and when they showed up, they were hired immediately. So much so that the meat processing barons, if I may, would send rail cars to the South to bring African Americans and their families.
You put this
back
in context, the history.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
back to Chicago. And so we found, and actually there's a photo at the stockyard gates, Silver, of an African American working in the meatpacking industry, working in the stockyards, dated 1904, and that photo resides with the Chicago Historical Society. We found another, what I would consider an iconic photo of African American men gathered in front of the Wabash Y right after the 1919 race riots, which really were more of a massacre, not a riot, if I may. But they were there to receive their paychecks.
My aunt would tell me that my grandmother pushed my mother and her under the bed because of the gunfire that was going on. They were on Bowen off of 47, off of Cottage Grove.
Oh my God.
And the fires, my aunt told me how she remembered the smell of smoke, the gunfire, and how my grandmother was protecting them during the massacre. You can put it that way. Go ahead.
So the stockyard community, the back of the yards, Bridgeport, became ground zero of a lot of the fighting and killing.
Yes.
Because as African American men got off the train to go to work, then they would be jumped on by mobs and some killed, maimed, etc. So they stopped going to work, and that's what precipitated. That's what precipitated the meat magnates, the meat barons, if I may, to set up a pay station at Wabash YMCA and brought their paychecks to Wabash YMCA. And there's an iconic photo with black men dressed to the nines, elbow to elbow, to pick up their paychecks at Wabash Y.
To take home to their wife and kids.
That's right. And that generation, if I may, really became the footprint of the first black middle class in Chicago, because their children, of course, had the opportunity to go to school, get an education, and even to this day, I just heard a story about Congressman Davis just last weekend, where he was born and raised in Arkansas, and he was educated in a one-room schoolhouse through 8th grade. So needless to say, those African-American families that arrived here in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s, etc., their children were able to get an education and became the foundation of the black middle class in Chicago.
I hope I can do a good job of steering. There's so many good things to talk about. Tell us a little bit background about the fastest man in all racing, bike racing history. Tell us a little bit about that, because we've got some other things to cover. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, Steve. It's such a phenomenal story. And before I get into the story, I certainly want to give kudos to Peter Taylor and Brenda Dixon, who appeared on the show that preceded this previous show, because they were the ones who were the community activists that got the Major Taylor Trail established, and they talked about its history. It's a fabulous trail, and over the Little Calumet River, which you can access from Whistler Woods and just go to the furthest end of the parking lot, and then you'll walk about 100 yards to the overpass of the river. There is a gorgeous, just a fabulous mural that was dedicated in 2017 to Major Taylor. And I dare to say it's got to be the longest mural dedicated to Major Taylor in the world. And it tells a story too. So If you have any leisure time where you just want to get out, take a walk, you certainly should go to the Major Taylor Trail in Whistler Woods and see that mural, and you'll just be amazed at the history and the story that it tells about Major,
Well,
as well as how it honors, his accomplishments during the Jim Crow era, Steve.
And we're going to bring up a subject that's very close to our Congressman, 1st Congressional District,
Yes.
Jonathan Jackson, and something that's been in the news for the last few days. Tell us a little bit about the award, the bill
Sure.
that is being put into Congress, but also how the bipartisan support, Democrats, Republicans,
Yes.
black, white, brown, are supporting this, etc. Go ahead, John, please.
Okay. So I want to go back just briefly and tell you a little bit about Major for those who missed the earlier segment. Born 1878, his dad fought on behalf of the Union in the Civil War, and his father was a carriage driver for a wealthy white family in Indianapolis, 1878. It's important to note 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, that legalized separate but equal, okay, and became the legal foundation of Jim Crow. 1896. In 1899, Marshall Major Taylor won a sprint championship in Montreal. And there's a lot of stuff about Major Taylor that's in the public domain. You can go to YouTube, see a number of videos, documentaries. You can go to Google and find articles about Major. 1899.
It's almost like a sprint for us now.
Yeah.
Because you know what? That congressional thing that's before us,
Yes.
we've got to bring that up.
Yes.
Tell us how far we're going.
Okay.
Because we're going to look for you, all you folks out there.
Yes.
We've got the bipartisan before, but seniors, elders, you have to begin flexing your political muscle now. All over this country, if you saw what I saw and the number of bipartisan support, you know that there's an avenue for us. Relatives that are all over, from coast to coast, from border to border, who live, your folks, you can say, have your congressman support this bill. John, go ahead and tell us how.
So when we learned that Major moved to Chicago in 1930 to sell his autobiography, he lived at the Wabash Y. And he took ill in 1932. He was in the hospital about 3 months, and he passed away at Cook County Hospital. Well, the hospital did not have any next of kin listed, and he was buried in a pauper grave. 1948, Frank Schwinn Bicycle, and other cyclists paid to have the body exhumed, and he was moved to the Memorial Garden, Mount Glenwood Cemetery, 1948. 1979, a group of African-American men, we call them the OGs, Silver, formed the very first Major Taylor Cycling Club. And since 1979, there are now over 100 Major Taylor cycling clubs throughout the world. There are certainly over 60 or 70 here in the United States. And so as we learned his story, Steve, because one of the persons who were very instrumental in saving the Wabash Y from the wrecking ball, once we learned he moved at the Wabash Y, we took interest in his story. And so as we began to research his story and build a coalition with Major Taylor groups like the Major Taylor Friends of the Major Taylor Trail, the Major Taylor Cycling Club of Chicago, and the Major Taylor Trail Keepers, Major Taylor Alliance, we decided to launch what we call the Major Taylor Initiative, Silver. And that initiative has 3 pillars. One, and this idea came from Congresswoman Robin Kelly, Bud Billiken Day 2022. She said, well, John, we need to get Major on a postage stamp. And I'm pleased to tell you that an application has been filed by his estate. That's number one.
Tell folks how many congressmen already are signed on board.
So the second pillar is to get Major the Congressional Gold Medal. We learned that a number of athletes already have it. We learned that a cyclist received it in 2020, just 3 years ago. And so we began to advocate, had his great-granddaughter here in Chicago, January 24th, 2023. And we first met Steve with Congressman Danny Davis. Danny said to us, I want Congressman Jackson to spearhead this initiative. I'm with you, I'm all behind you, but I want Congressman Jackson to take this challenge. And little did we know that Congressman Jackson had been riding with the Major Taylor Cycling Club for a number of years. So it just actually turned into a perfect fit. We began to work with his congressional office.
Tell about the process.
Yeah,
What's the process?
in February, worked with him to develop the bill by May, and the bill was filed December 7th, a week ago today. And that bill, in less than a week, now, it's my understanding there are over 50 signers to the bill. But when I last checked, and I had the firm numbers,
congressional members.
50
Okay.
congressional
Bipartisan.
members. Bipartisan. But when I checked about just a few days ago, when it was about 43, 44 had signed on, there were approximately 10 members from the GOP and about 30, 31 members of the Democratic Party.
Would people be surprised as to which Republicans? Don't say the names, but
oh my God,
they would be surprised. Who else is jumping on the bandwagon, right?
Congress.gov. We'll have a link at our website, again, www.bronzevilletrail.org, and you can see in real time, and it's a wonderful thing that Congress has provided for us as citizens, to follow bills and see what stage they're in, to see which congresspersons have signed on to the bill. And I was told yesterday that now we're up to 50, and I would imagine that there's more GOP representatives and Democratic representatives.
We got 4 minutes left. We got to talk about the embankment.
Okay.
Talk about the embankment, the money, what's going to happen there.
Let's do that. Yeah. So I began to talk about how when we incorporated, left off September 2020. Since that time, we have been advocating with the city and the county that this abandoned rail line, abandoned for over 65 years, should be repurposed as a linear park.
What was the options? Tell people the options.
Yeah, and so the options, sir, Silver, the options were, and so one of the first things we were able to accomplish with the support of Alderman Pat Dow and the support of President Tony Preckwinkle is to get the city to invest in a feasibility study. That took place. The study was finalized in January of 2023, and it looked at 3 scenarios, Silver. One, to do nothing, and that would still cost millions due to the deferred maintenance.
Still cost millions
Still
to
cost
do nothing.
Millions to do nothing. Mm-hmm. 2, in fact, trees literally are falling from the embankment. God willing, no one gets injured. Number 2, to tear it all down. And to my surprise, to tear it down would cost more than to repurpose it to a linear park, very much similar to the Bloomingdale Trail on the north side.
And that benefits the community.
At its core, Steve, it's Silver, it's a health initiative. We're over-indexed in heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, right? You name it. We are over-indexed as Black people. And so this is another health initiative where we can get out, take a walk, get some exercise in a safe environment, from as we would say, from the cradle to the grave, and enjoy the amenities that this trail will have to offer.
You told me a little bit about the atmosphere. Go ahead.
Yeah. The former commissioner of the Department of Planning said, John, this project is going to induce over $1 billion of investment in Bronzeville. Bronzeville has a lot of vacant land, a lot of city-owned vacant land, county-owned vacant land, and we expect that vacant land to be used for affordable housing, for small business development, mixed-use development, other commercial development, and also for more green space, so that we have places in our community where we could go, sit down and just relax, listen to the birds or whatever the case may be, and just enjoy nature, and certainly bring that stress level down from our day-to-day living.
Just think about that embankment running from Cottage Lake Park west.
Yeah. So it's gonna on the eastern end, it'll connect with the Lakefront Bike Trail, which is just amazing. It'll be a spoke to downtown Chicago, to the future Obama Presidential Center, of course, and the Museum Center, etc. And then on the western end, and again, this is...
Tell folks how they can be engaged. Tell them how they can be engaged.
On the western end, I have to remind your audience that we're literally adjacent to Roberts Temple, which is now a national monument. So lastly, again, you could email us at bronzevilletrail.org.
Write it down.
Please send an email, bronzevilletrail.org. Steve, I want to thank you. I want to thank our press conference sponsor, Providence Bank, that stepped up at the 11th hour and provided us the necessary funding to have an amazing press conference and to be here today. So,
Elders, start to flex your legislative political muscle
Yes.
now. This is the chance to do some things that you're able to do. You have the wisdom to do that.
and all over the country.
All over the
country. So all 3 local congresspersons have already signed on. But if you have relationships anywhere in the country, have them
Get on the
contact their
phone, get on
local
the phone.
congressperson to get behind this bill. It's the Major Taylor Congressional Gold Medal Act. It's the highest civilian award
The
that
highest.
the country makes. And it requires 2/3 of the vote of the House, 2/3 of the vote of the Senate.
It's doable, John.
And
It's
we're
doable.
gonna make it happen because Major deserves this.
Seniors, our elders can help make this happen. It's
They
your
can.
opportunity
They absolutely
for this.
can. Get on the phone tonight and speak to your friends and colleagues, your relatives from all around the country, and ask them to call their local congressperson to support the Marshall
What's the
Major
bill?
Taylor
Okay.
Congressional Gold Medal Act for Major Taylor, the first African American international sports champion in cycling. And when he retired as the wealthiest black athlete in the world.
And he was the fastest man in the world at the time.
Known
on the
as
bicycle.
the Black Cyclone, the Whirlwind.
Uh-huh.
But of course, he had to experience all the trials and tribulations of being an African American in a sport not predominantly white, that was completely Caucasian, because white cycling groups and venues would not allow him to race. He had to move from Indianapolis to Worcester, Massachusetts, where he raced.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of one race, Steve, he was choked unconscious. And so, he was sworn at, spit on. I mean, literally everything you can imagine during the early 1900s. He raced professionally from roughly the late 1898, 1897, 99, when he won the championship. And again,
this
he was
all
a young
in Europe
man.
at the time?
Yeah, this was in the States. And he
Okay.
raced in Chicago, by the way, in black-only races here in Chicago.
Let me say thanks to our great production crew, Imani Payne and Rosia Santos. Thank you again for helping us put such a great show together. I saw the rap, and you know we were talking fast. When I see that rap sign, I know that you mean business, and you're trying to get us off the air gracefully. But I'm so glad to have you here,
Thank you,
John,
Steve.
and we'll have to
Appreciate
do something again.
Yeah,
All right?
yeah.
That's
Thank
not the cap is shaking.
No, by no means. By no means. We wouldn't let Silver in.
Very good. Good to have my Divine Nine brother with me on the show.